Welcome to the Leadership in Land podcast, where we talk about what actually moves the needle in the land business. This show isn't about getting rich or quick schemes or magic mail pieces. It's about leadership, systems, decision making, the stuff that you just happen to figure out after your third or fourth pricing mistake, or maybe just your first. This deal looks great on paper, guy, in a moment. Well, tune in with me today, my friends, and let's dive right in.
You're listening to the RE Tipster Podcast Network.
Okay, so quick question for you. Have you heard of our Skool community? I just want to make sure to invite you to check that out. If you're listening to this episode, it's actually kind of old, to be honest with you. And so if you want our latest, if you want our greatest content we're putting out, real conversations about leadership, decision making, building a land business that actually works in the real world, get inside our Skool community where you get access to the free leadership course, plus bonus episodes, discussions, and insights that honestly just don't make it onto the podcast. So if you're serious about this, you want to learn more about leadership, get in the community, check it out, leadershipinland.com or skool.com/leadershipinland. All right, let's get in the episode. Hey everybody, Dave Denniston with the Leadership in Land podcast, Generation Family Property. So glad to have you back with us, where our goal is to help 1,000 different land investors be the best leader that they could possibly be. I am honored to have our next guest on with us. He's someone that I've seen grow in the land business, and he actually approached me, I want to say now it was 2 years ago, year and a half ago, something like that. And he was literally just getting going in land. He had a roommate who brought him to land originally. And it's been an honor to see him go from this kind of research phase to doing it, to doing even more. I am honored to have on the podcast Ryan Love. Ryan, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate the introduction. I could tell you've done it a couple times. You might have your introduction down a little bit better than me, but it's great to be on here. It's a great honor. It's more of an honor for me to be on your podcast, and I've learned a ton from you. You probably don't even know, but I definitely take some things. I look at how you run your business, how we interacted at the start, and I've learned a ton from you. So it's a great honor to be here, and I'm excited to talk about leadership.
Love it, man. No, it's I can't even wait to see where you're going to be at like another 2 years from now. Just the great start that you're on. You came literally fresh out of college, doing this thing. You had a number of different options and things you could do. And you chose land. For people that maybe don't know you a little bit, can you just tell us a little bit, Ryan, about your background and where you came from and how you found land?
Yeah. So I guess the background, we could start, we could go really far back, but we'll start in college, I guess.
Yes, let's do it.
I was going to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, studying mechanical engineering there. So yeah, the first time I was really introduced to land, it must have been my fourth year. I ended up taking a couple extra quarters, but we don't need to get too far into that. So my roommate, as you had mentioned, had been doing land, and he had been talking to us about some of the deals. He's a good salesman too, so he definitely sold us on the process. Like, oh, Ryan, I made $20,000 this week. And I was just like, no, you didn't. You didn't make $20,000. He's like, yeah, I did. I was like, you're lying. But anyways, one of my roommates started like learning a bit from him, and I was like, I should probably go down there and listen to Rylan as he talks there. And so I would listen to him, and he'd start showing us how to put together a mailer. Lots of maybe things that we'd consider outdated now, but at the time, he's telling us what he knew. He was about, 6 months into it. So maybe not the best course or best coach, I would say at the time, but definitely told us everything he knew. So I appreciate him for getting me into that. And so he told me a bit about it, and I'd try to do it on the side, right? I try to, over the summer, I'd be looking into it, but I'd have an internship, right? So I'd be trying to figure out how to comp properties. And I remember just sitting there, I'd spent some money on mail, probably a couple thousand. And I was just sitting there after work, just exhausted. It was engineering, so it was pretty tough on me mentally at work. And I'd get home and I'd sit at my desk, and I remember just one point just being like, I can't do it. I can't do it. So anyways, I knew I couldn't do it at work, but I knew that, I could give it a shot before I started my job. And so that's what I did. I pushed all my classes, whatever I had left for the year, into 2 quarters so that I could, focus that 3rd quarter and then into the summer on land. So basically I graduated, had 4 months in order to start looking at if I could do this or not. So I moved from California to Florida at that point and moved in with my brother. That's where I'm at now. So yeah, moved in here, had 4 months to really put it all on the line. And yeah, started spending a lot of money on marketing, bought a property. It was, by the time I had to make that decision, I was down money, but I just knew that it would come back, or I had faith that it would. So that's how I really got into it. And then I would say after that 4 months, slowly I started to regain. It's a very long timeline, right? You invest your money now, you might be seeing the money in a year.
Yes.
Right. So that's a bit of a tough thing, especially if you're doing another job on the side. If you're not fully dedicated, fully focused, it's going to be hard to at least start that business. As you do, Dave, you can do 2 businesses at once. At the start, it's really hard. So that was what I would say was my biggest challenge, was finding that time, to dedicate and having that faith that it would come back.
Love it. Well, let's zoom forward in time and tell us a little bit, Ryan, about your business today, and who do you have working with you that you're helping to lead?
Yeah. So I have, I think, the numbers change here and there, but I have 2 people on the phones for me right now. So those I both consider acquisitions people. The goal of my whole business is to get as many contracts signed as I can. So that's my goal. After that, I have realtors. I did have a transaction coordinator for a while there, and I'll probably be looking to hire one here soon. Anyways, goal is to get a lot of contracts signed. Also, I have 2 people on lead generation who are texting, doing RVMs, and I have someone who pulls data, prices data, so that we can text them and we can, mail whatever form of marketing we're doing. So right now there's 5 people, and then a 6th I have part-time who will filter data. So team of 5 right now, soon looking to hire a couple more.
Love it. I think you're doing a great job of covering a lot of the major bases, right? Doing the data and pricing takes a lot of time.
Yep.
Doing texting takes a crap load of time and energy, and certainly the acquisitions takes a lot of time. So I would love to know, with these people that you've hired, and I'm sure, like many of us, you've gone through a few people to get to your current team you have today. Where have you hired people? Where have you looked? What kind of tips and advice would you give those of us looking to grow our team?
Yeah. So I've looked a number of different places. I'll start out with the biggest tips I've seen so far about where to look to hire. And we've talked about this a little bit, I believe, before we started, but the Philippines is a good place, and a lot of people will go there for their first VA. If you're starting out the land business, you're probably not going to get an American person on your team unless you're partnering with them. So going overseas for VAs, Philippines is really good for any of those lead generation positions that don't require you to be on the phone. Also very good with data. So just some differences that,
So let me interrupt you just real quick, Ryan. So in regards to the Philippines, where were you specifically looking? Like what website or recruiting agencies, or where did you find those people?
Yeah, so starting out, I used onlinejobs.ph. So I think a lot of people use it. I'm not too sure. I normally stay away from doing my own employee search. At this point now, I have someone. Normally I pay between $1,000 to $1,500, and they'll search for employees for me depending on what characteristics I'm looking at. So
who's that? Where did you find them?
Yeah, so I have one Premier, I think it's Premier VA is one for the Philippines. I don't know if I would go look probably else. I haven't had the best results there. But it's something that takes you have to really be dedicated and have that time put aside if you want to look for them yourself. You could have someone on your team look for them. I don't like that too much because I really want to have consistent numbers, leads, and everything. So having someone else look for me is what I've done, and they send me, applications, a video of them. And a lot of times if they don't stick in that position, then you can replace them. For example, I also have one that I use for US jobs. And for US jobs, they'll I just replaced an acquisitions manager. I don't know. I said US, I meant Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to replace an acquisitions manager. So if you pay for insurance, I pay like $50 a month so that I can replace them if, their performance goes down, as long as it's something they deem as a reasonable cause, showing up late to meetings, whatever it is. So.
And who's that? Who's the Latin America folks you're using?
Yeah, so I've used Yellowberry for a bit. I looked into them, and then also Outsource Your Tasks, I believe they're called. So there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, part of the goals of this podcast, and eventually, of course, I want to give people, hey, here's all the places you could look. So I appreciate you adding to the list. We used Remote Latinos. They were interesting. There's another firm that we've had some recent success with as well too. Interestingly enough, with the Remote Latinos, they ended up finding an Egyptian. So it says Remote Latinos. It doesn't necessarily always mean Latinos. I suppose part of that was on us to say, hey, we specifically want only people from this kind of country. We have another one as well, a gal named Ashley Hightower. She will do South Africa, Egypt, Latin America, Philippines. So she pulls from a lot of different sources too. I believe in all of this, which I'm working on to this day, is really having even like a funnel for hiring, meaning that, you start with all these different candidates and you want to get it down to just one. And so building out a process, okay, we go stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. How do you think of that with some of the hiring that you've done?
Interesting. Yeah. So you think funnel, what would your characteristics be of funneling?
Writing and sending purchase agreements doesn't have to take all day. With Stride CRM, you can generate a full contract with one click, send it to the seller, and track every step until it's digitally signed. No more switching between DocuSign and Google Drive and email. Stride keeps everything digital, fast, and organized in one place. Visit stridecrm.co and start watching your business improve today.
Yeah, just for example, I've been interviewing new lead managers for our business, right? And so I hired one of these firms, Ashley Hightower's firm in this particular case. I think REI Game Changers is the name of that one. And so she sends candidates, right? Well, I don't want to just interview anybody, even though they're doing some vetting, because at the end of the day, they just want their commission. Right? Yeah, that's they don't really care how happy I am. They just want their commission. So I told Ashley, okay, here's a test I want people to take. And so in this case, it had to do with understanding a little bit of access scrubbing to know the difference between legal and physical access, and then trying to have them ask questions as though they were role playing with a prospect on the phone. So I could see, okay, what kind of questions are they asking? What is their accent like? Stuff like that. So I have a chance to review that. Number one, are they even doing it? Right. So that eliminates people right there of people that aren't doing it. Number two, the people that are doing it, what are they sounding like? So I've moved from top of the funnel to kind of middle of the funnel. And then based on good people there, then I'll do like a 30-minute interview where we'll do a little bit of role playing. I'll do some more homework and kind of quiz them just to see, okay, were they just looking on the internet, or how well did they understand the concepts? And then they go down to another interview, if you will, and then kind of a final one down at the bottom. So ideally, I get down to one candidate at the bottom, but I might have 2 here, 3 here, 4 here, and so on. So that's what I mean by a funnel. Is there's different steps, get it done to maximize my time. So I'm not like wasting a bunch of time with people that clearly aren't a good fit.
Yeah, I appreciate the explanation. It gave me time to think of what my funnel is because I've never really thought of it. I did more of it when I was hiring the people myself. So there'd be a list of things, send me your resume. That's part of a funnel, right? If they don't send me a resume, they just message you, right? Send me a 2-minute introduction on yourself. I would do that. Also have them take an English test. So that's a big chopping block. Some people just cheat on the English test and may not have a good resume. But anyways, that'll cut people out. After that, if they were, for example, texting, like the texter I still have today, I hired myself off Online Jobs PH. What we would do is have them go through live and respond like, hey, don't worry too much about the contents of this. Just I want you to see how you respond and how your grammar is, right? So that was the most important thing for me there, was that they could write back different responses. They had, some idea of what would be a normal response. And so that was one of my funnels there. Yeah, so those are the main things I can think of. I think it's definitely good to have something like that. I would normally do one interview, and at this point, I'm pretty quick to hire people. And if it's not right, I think the best way is to be quick to let them go as well. So.
Absolutely. You mentioned taking English tests. How are you doing that? Like what are you sending them to figure that out?
Yeah, so Cambridge English Test is the one I use. I think if you just look that up, it should come up. I believe it's 25 questions. Funny story, actually, me and my roommate, we used to share a VA, our first VA together. And I think he might still be floating around the land space too, because my roommate will say he's part of some big communities and he's like, oh, he got hired by someone else. And we will laugh about it a little bit. Hopefully this doesn't get back to him. But anyways, he scored a perfect on the English testing. We eventually, we were new to the game. We realized he wasn't the right one. There were a number of issues. And we go back and I'm looking at the English test. I'm like, this isn't that easy. And I was like looking at what he was typing. I'm like, Ron, he cheated. He for sure cheated on the English test. Like we can't let that one happen to us again. But anyways, that's another thing where you learn that as you hire more people and learn to have them do stuff live in front of you instead of just, taking their word for it. They might be able to speak well, but, writing's a completely different thing. So
totally. So you mentioned doing it live in front of you. Like, are you giving them access to your launch control or whatever, or is it in some other format that you're testing them to do that?
Yeah, just the Google Doc is what I do. If they're on that lead generation side, I want them to be able to email. I want them to be able to text. So I say, hey, respond to this text in a way. Again, I don't stress. I tell them, hey, I don't need you to say the perfect thing. I just need to see that you can speak in the right way or type or write in the right way. And after that, I'll do some emails, make sure they know how to format an email properly. Right. So
it's good. I love it.
3 of each on Google Doc, share the doc with them, let them do it live. They'll be under a little bit of pressure, so they'll definitely mess up a little bit, but it's an easy way to tell.
One advice that was given in one of the podcasts we recorded here by Clay Hepler, which I thought was really good advice, is he actually gives the person, and he'll watch them do it, giving access to his stuff. And he'll change his password immediately afterward. So he actually sees them working. So if it's a call person, he'll be giving them, hey, here's a basic script. Here's this person to call, go after it. And so they'll actually be calling live and he hears them do it live. Or if it was launch control, I'm sure he'd actually have them get in the software just to see how they navigate around. And you're doing a lighter, more safer version of that.
Yeah.
But I think in both cases, you're really testing them to see how they're doing in a scenario, which I think is incredibly smart and a really, really good idea. Before even coming into Land, Ryan, I know you were in college and you had, some jobs along the way, internships and stuff like that. How did you consider yourself as a leader just coming into Land to begin with? Like, what did you bring with you think, in terms of characteristics or abilities, stuff you've learned, stuff like that?
Yeah. So before going into land, I didn't have too much leadership experience. Going the engineering route, I knew that down the line you'd become a leader if you wanted to go high. I don't know. I've always wanted to, whatever I do it the best I can. So I knew that was something that would, come up at some point. So I like to study the way people would lead other people, I guess. So I had an idea of some things. One of the things that I study and continue to try to do is just the way you notice a lot of the high leaders, the way they speak, how they can formulate their points clearly. They're not stuttering too much. And I think having someone like that who can speak clearly, it gives more confidence. And trying to eliminate, I think I just said it back there. So I'm listening to how I speak, and I'll listen to this podcast back as well. Try to figure out where can I speak better and how can I say it more clearly. So I think getting behind someone who can speak clearly and all of that is good. The other thing is just, I have to think a little bit more here. There's been a lot of lessons. I would say also just really understanding, like trying to connect with the people there's, that are below you and that you're leading and all that. So having, starting your meetings off with something good that happened this week, like trying to learn something more about the people that work for you every week. But there's a very fine line there, is something that I've grown to learn, is you want to know more about them and get to know more about them, but there's got to be a very fine line that I'm not your friend. And I think that's something a lot of people who would come into a business like this, and potentially myself as well, have made the mistake. And what's the balance on this? You just have to, in my mind, call out anything you see pretty early on. Don't let it keep growing and growing and growing. And so I have a meeting set up every month on my calendar, every one of the people. Maybe it should be every 2 weeks. I don't like having them, but having that reoccurring meeting just where I say, hey, bring anything you have about me. If I'm doing something good, if I'm doing something bad, I want to let me know. Right. And I think that's another thing I've learned. The people who you want to work for take feedback, and they take it well. Not saying that I'm going to change my whole business based on what someone says. I do want to take into account and let them know that they can say how they feel if I'm in the wrong. If I'm not doing my part, it's a really bad example. And you want to lead by example. Obviously, you want to be early to meetings. You want to, do all those things that are small, and set an example yourself of how you want them to behave. Because if you set a low bar, they likely won't go above it.
I think one of the things I've been learning as a leader, I made a bad assumption sometimes that people get something when I say it to them the first time. And I'm learning in the season I'm in right now, hey, I need people to reiterate back constantly what the mission is, what the goals are, before I think, okay, hey, they've been told the KPIs, they're going to remember it, right?
Yeah.
No, you have to constantly, it can feel like getting on people, just be like, okay, here's where we're at. What are we shooting towards? What are we shooting towards? And getting their buy-in along the way. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I had a lot of things I was thinking about as you were saying that. One thing I do every day, I'm not going to go back through and listen to all your calls when you're not there, but I'll go through, and with the two sales guys I have, we have 30 minutes every morning. We're going to listen to 2 calls. I'm picking them at random. So a lot of people, I think, just try to look away from it. And it's a painful thing to look at if your salesperson isn't making great calls and you know it's happening, but you don't really want to address it. Having that meeting every day, right? I have it with my lead generation people too. We're going through texts. You didn't respond to this person for a day. We need that response time lower. If we had that response time lower, we'd have double the leads, right? How do we get that response time lower? So just working through that, people will give a lot of control to their VAs to just have them start running on their own, because it's pretty simple, right? Texting, it's very binary. They say this, you input that template, right? It's either here or it's there. But you really don't want to get caught up in just letting them run with it and not checking it, a couple times a week. So that's worked well for me. Maybe it's too much, maybe it's too little.
Well, it's an interesting thing though, right? Where on one hand, you don't want to be a micromanager where people feel like you're breathing down their neck all the time. But on the other hand, there's an accountability piece to all of it in terms of they have a job to do. You want to make sure they're doing it well and that you're coaching them. And especially if they're newer, if they've been with you like 3 years and they're constantly crushing it, but especially if you start seeing, hey, gosh, we're not close to our goals here, that's the most vital time to be on people. How do you think of that micromanaging versus letting them do their job? When are you crossing the line of being a micromanager?
Yeah. So like I said, all that time I spend looking at that, I'm going to spend it looking with them. I want to immediately say, hey, I don't like this, right? If you're doing it behind and you're going through on your weekends, managing all of that, I'd rather get it out of the way, just do it with you and give you that feedback right there. The other thing with micromanaging, I'm very careful about how you're giving people feedback on this, right? So I try to never put the blame on them. I just had today that monthly meeting with my person who's texting. And when we go through in those meetings every 2 times a week, the response time isn't great. That's why I brought that up, right? So I'm not framing it as, hey, the response time isn't good. Why aren't you responding to them quick enough? Instead, framing it as, hey, what can I do to help you to get this response time lower? I think those two things are really going to change the frame in their mind about if you're micromanaging them or if you're someone who's trying to help them hit your goals.
Love it. Just something simple. What can I do to help you achieve that? That's great. Yeah. Very, very good. What about one of the things as a leader that I really think about, Ryan, is vision. Being a visionary. Some of us are better at it than others. What's your vision? And how are you communicating that to the team?
Yeah. So I think the best way about going about this, you could try to develop your own system, but that's reinventing the wheel. So I use engineering, EOS, engineering operating system.
Yep.
Anyways,
Yep.
So there's a lot there about vision, and each quarter you update what you think you're going to be at in a year, in 5 years, and then you're setting rocks, right? 90-day goals. I believe Callan was the first one who had brought this book to my attention, and I heard it brought up one other place, and I was like, I shouldn't stand by on this one. I should probably give it a read. So I gave that a read, and I think that's a very good way of doing it. And so it's still pretty new to the team. So it's interesting getting it going, but every week, right, going over those 90-day goals, every quarter going over, longer term goals for where you think it's going. And eventually, at this point, it's just me, so I don't think it's as impactful. But as you bring in more people who are, likely going to be on that leadership team, having everyone get on the same page as far as that goes is super important, right? At this point, it's me saying, hey, here's my vision. I haven't found someone yet or haven't hired the right person to help me. Like, hey, what do you think? What do you think? The person I hired from the US, I'm very hopeful, and he's super passionate. So I'm really excited about that. I see him in those future positions. And one thing I learned from you as well, Dave, when we first met, you were having me do some research for you on the tax liens.
Yeah.
And one thing I noticed from you, I don't know, you might have needed the research, you might not have. You probably knew some of it already, but just starting people out slowly and seeing what they can do. At that point, we were thinking about potentially partnering on one of your businesses. And I think that was the interview, right? How does he show up? How does he present his data? I don't know how interested, you might have had some interest there. You probably already knew a lot of it about it, but I could see the way that you operate there. And it was interesting. And that taught me a lot as well. I'm guessing you agree with this, but not starting someone, especially like that, right? He's a friend who is like interested in land, right? So I start off very skeptical, like, okay, like let's have you do some comps. And then he's like getting all the comps done super quick. And it's like, okay. And he's like, I just called my dad, his friend in Tennessee, like he might want to buy this one. And I'm like, he's doing this on the weekend and everything. And I'm like, okay, like I can start to trust that he's going to be there fully rather than just like, all right, let's start you full time right away, all that stuff. So that's something I learned from you.
I would say I generally try and do that. It's when you have a lot going on as a business owner, it's very easy just to shove here's all this stuff, go and try and figure it out. And I think, again, something I'm personally always working on, as we were just talking about, hey, what's our funnel for this role? What's the training for this role? And how can I divide up this job into these bits and pieces where on one hand, I want them to stay busy, but I want to keep them intellectually engaged and trying to grow into the role. And I want them to get to it sooner rather than later. Right. So it's balancing that. Do you have any advice on how you think about that? Or maybe you haven't thought about that in terms of systematizing. We have a new person coming in. Mm-hmm. How are you going to train them on this existing role that you already have? Yeah.
So the way I do it, and I'm operating at a much smaller scale than you are. So when I bring on a new person, they're going to come to the meetings I normally have, right? The person I'm bringing on for sales, and he's also doing a bit of comping, right, that I've been talking about, he's going to those meetings where I'm reviewing calls. So we'll still keep those meetings going. And the other thing that I'll do is I'll have 45 minutes a day where it's like, okay, like let's go over whatever you need to do, like whatever you have questions about, because there's a lot of times so much you take for granted and you're not really thinking about all your processes there. So just working with them personally and one-on-one about how to, expand. There a ton of questions, right, come up there. So and then also having him shadow someone who's already in the position, right? So my current acquisitions guy is teaching him a bit. They got on a call and, showing him how he does it. He has a lot of experience, right? So they can both learn from each other. So those are the two ways, have someone on your team who already knows the position, teach them everything. I like to mix it a little bit and have myself, tell them, I really like things done a specific way. So just make sure those expectations are set clear at the start, because if you try to change it later on, right, it's a lot harder. Yeah. And even though I like my current acquisitions guy, right, the one I've had for longer, he does some things like not everyone's going to follow what down to the T, right? He adds some of his own flavor in there, which I'm okay with, right? Because he's been in sales for 5 years. So I'm okay with him freestyling a little bit. Probably shouldn't be. But anyways, having myself on the call with the new person, I think helps out a lot. Not sure if I answered the question or just...
Well, it sounds like if I'm just kind of distilling what I'm hearing from you, Ryan, of what you're doing really well, you're really investing time into all these people. New hires like this gentleman you're talking about, you're spending like an hour with him daily. Yeah. You're spending 30-minute kind of stand-up meetings with different departments on a daily basis and going over, hey, let's listen to this call together. Let's go over text messages together. So you're spending a lot of time with people currently yourself. So I'm sure you have a lot of meetings going on a daily basis. Some of them don't take very long, 30 minutes. But I'm imagining, your calendar being full with meetings as well as just checking up on the business and what's happening, stuff like that. Do you have any sort of tools that you're using that are helping you with leadership or systems that outside of like a Pebble, a lot of people have heard of Pebble as a CRM, anything that comes to mind for you?
Yeah. So every day people fill out, and before I get into this, big shout out to Mike Balcom. Stole this completely from him. Really smart guy. So might want to have him on the podcast. He might have a couple more ideas on this but anyways, So I have people fill out Google Forms at the end of the day. Everyone does it. Key numbers I'm tracking. So for acquisitions, for me, it's talk time, calls made, contract sent, contract signed. Those are the four numbers I track. You could track more or less. For people texting, number of texts sent, number pushed to follow-up boss or whatever CRM you're using. Response rates, might be a couple others. Average response time, I believe. So that gives me some key metrics. All those forms populate into a Google Sheet. And basically every Friday we have a meeting and I'll go over those numbers. That's a good part of our meeting. And I think that also too, if you're not performing well, it really shows in front of the group, and people don't want to look like they're, dragging the team behind, because then everyone else is like, come on, our bonuses are dependent on that and everything. So after that, I'll get color coded: red, yellow, green. Did you hit your numbers? Did you have a really good day? Did you have an average day? And as you go far enough out, you start to see trends and you can set goals. Without that, it's going to be really hard to see who's performing, who's not performing. So, and then with that data, I pull a couple key numbers like EOS does, and have those weekly metrics that I track. So,
love it. Yeah. So those are all KPIs. You're doing it through a Google form, so they're self-reporting.
Yeah.
And then it's coming together in a spreadsheet. One of my concerns always would be with self-reporting is the integrity of the data.
Yeah.
Like, are you spot checking it as part of the process just to make sure that the integrity is good, or how do you think about that? What's that like?
Yeah. So I won't spot check every numbers, but the key numbers I do, right? I'll go through and look. I have a section for the lead generation people. My biggest number for them is the amount of leads they're generated, right? Everything else there is just, part of the story, but that's the key number. So I'll see, I still do all the final comps. So I'll see if they're pushing bad leads, and I'll go back to them. Hey, there's no road access here. We can't have our people spending time on that, right? But I'll go back. I have a section in Slack where it tells me every time a new lead is pushed, and that just automatically done by Zapier. So it tells the acquisitions manager, right, that there's a new lead. We need to contact them as soon as possible. And then it also tells me what the lead source was. So I can go back, and I do as well, go back, check their numbers. Haven't had an issue with anyone misreporting that yet, because it's all numbers that are easy to check, right? So if you have numbers that you can't check, then they're useless.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. No, I love it. So you're making a dashboard for yourself, red, yellow, green lights. And you've evolved into this. Sounds like, I mean, you picked up some ideas you mentioned from me earlier. Mike Balcom has been great in helping you do this dashboard. I'd love to know, as you reflect back on your journey so far, as a leader, when's been your lowest moment? Can you tell us about, a moment that you were just, as a leader, feeling like you were failing, and help us understand, or maybe just not doing as well, that you were frustrated. Can you tell us about that moment?
Yeah, so I would say one of the moments that I felt like I was failing was there's a period of time as you hire people, it takes a really long time, basically from when you hire to when you see the results, because everything in land, imagine 6 months to a year out. So there was a period of time where I had just gotten off the phones and had hired my first person to get on the phones. And he didn't have experience doing land specifically. There'd been some sort of real estate, might not have been the best hire looking back on it. And it took a while to train him as well. So there was just a big gap there where we weren't getting a lot of contracts signed, and we go over that every week, right? So it's just going over it every week. Oh, we didn't get anything signed, nothing closed today. And generally too, there's just those periods where, you have a lot of deals ongoing, and just for whatever reason, and we had a good amount of people like pushing him leads, and it wasn't working that well. So as he got more trained and got more experience, he was getting more confident on the phones and was able to close those deals. But that was a moment as a leader where I'm like, I don't know if my team has confidence because everyone's seen it, right? So I think that's, that would be.
It's so fascinating as I think about my journey over the last 7 years that there's been several moments with certain people where I'm like, ugh, are they going to still be working for me? Like I was on the verge of firing them, right? But then they were able to pull back and our relationship was that much stronger. Sounds like you kind of went through one of those moments. And some of those people have been some of my best, most loyal people, since we went through that time together. And that's why I think for me personally, like firing someone can be hard because I've seen it where someone turns it around, right? But that doesn't always happen either. Have you experienced that at all in your time yet running the land business where someone was able to sounds like you did, someone turning around? What about firing? Any lots of firing along the way? How many folks do you let go?
I have 3 people or 2 people that were there right from the beginning, both the data people. I think the data side is a lot less burnout. Data and lead generation, depending on if lead generation is RBMs, that's a different story. There's going to be burnout there. But I think especially on the sales, and that's where I've had the most, replacements there, had a couple. So it's super hard. I remember coming to the conference, the UnConference you put on last year, and that was one of the things. I had someone on the phones who definitely shouldn't have been on the phones, didn't really have experience, and that's something you'll learn how to identify that and play the audio clip for everyone in the room. And they're like, you gotta get her in a different position or she's gotta go. And I remember thinking like, man, like this is super, super tough. One of the harder things I would say, because, you have that relationship with them. But at the end of the day, if you keep letting it go, it just keeps growing and festering and the problem becomes much worse. So you got to just tell them, hey, if you have a different position, you have a different position. If there's no other position that they can be in, it's just not the right fit. And you just got to tell them that sooner the better. It's one of those things like maybe going to the gym where you can dread it. And then once you do it, you're like, you feel so good. You feel free. Like the weight is just completely lifted. So definitely the hardest on that first one. And there's been a couple others along the way, but it's tough.
It's I think it's always hard when you feel someone's trying, they're putting in effort. It's the people that have an attitude and don't put in the effort that it's easy, right? Like, when someone's trying so hard, you want them to succeed. I had one gal one time. I had hired her, and she was. I had hired an intake manager, which at the time is kind of the combination of a transaction coordinator with an acquisitions manager with a lead manager all in one role. And she just had such an attitude. Like she wanted to tell me what she was going to work on rather than following the directions. And it was like, no, you're gone. It was a very easy decision to make. And she was like, fine, I didn't want the job anyhow. I was like, that person's easy to get rid of.
Yeah.
It's these folks that, like your gal, it sounded like she was trying, she was making effort, but just not the in the right seat kind of a thing. And I know EOS, I believe, has a system around that too, in terms of company culture and where they fit and stuff like that. Well, Ryan, I want to wrap up our time together here for the day. But before I do that, I would love to hear from you. We mentioned a lot of different things that you use along the way, like for the English test and some of the other resources you mentioned. Is there any other book or tool or resource just one that you think, man, land investors should be getting into this?
Yeah, I would say EOS is pretty transformative. I'm trying to think of a different answer so that any sort of tool. Did you say tool or book?
Yeah, tool, book, podcast, you name it around leadership that you've personally gained a lot out of.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say as far as leadership goes, I would definitely say I don't have anything that compares to EOS. It really lays it out. That's really the book that I've read that's most on leadership. I was in a phase where I was reading all self-improvement or business books,
Yep,
but
yep.
not really in that phase anymore. Just reading more relaxing stuff. But EOS definitely I would check out, and that's
Good
what I
job.
base a lot of my things on.
Traction, I believe, is the book
Yes,
that
yes.
the EOS system is on.
Yeah.
Have you ever engaged like an EOS coach up to this point, or has it been just something you've been implementing on your own?
No, haven't engaged that yet. It applies more to larger businesses. So I think eventually, probably at your scale, Dave, or even larger scales than that is where it really starts, I think, to make more sense. As a lot of it's like, oh, meet with your leadership team. A lot of these new land investors don't have a leadership team. I don't have a leadership team. You might. Do you have a leadership team?
I would say I do.
Yeah.
Because part of my journey the last year has been merging businesses together. So before in my main business, I didn't have a partner, but when we did the merger, now I'm the vast majority owner, but I have a partner, so he's part of the leadership team for sure. I have a gal that's been, I called it COO, which I think it is kind of a COO light. So she's part of the leadership team. We have a sales gal that's been with me for a long time whose opinion we highly, highly value. We're probably going to give her the opportunity to buy into the business next year. So I consider her part of the leadership team. And so I think we do have a leadership team in place. It's just not to where I want it to be yet. I really want someone that truly is amazing at being a COO and understanding systems and being in masterminds and all the kind of things, really getting into traction, for example, like you mentioned, which Eric is very much into. So he's kind of filling a little bit of that role to a degree too. There's a lot of mid-management roles that we haven't filled yet. Yeah. That at the end of the day, I think will be like the management team, right? Ideally, I want mid-managers reporting to me, which I have that to some degree right now. It's just not, even with the volume and the amount of people we have in the team, we're not there yet, in terms of those roles. So what about you? You going to be hiring anyone, you think, or you think the sales guy might potentially be kind of that mid-manager guy? What's your vision for the future with that?
Yeah, we'll see how he does. Start him off slow. It's only been a couple weeks, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but he's got the passion for it, and he knows that area super well, so I think he's going to be a big part of it in the future. Other than that, I'll be looking to get a transaction coordinator. I've been handling them as like one of my main roles. I do transaction coordination and compings, but it's too much. It gets to that point, and I should be doing bigger things. So yeah, I think you just start to plug those holes as it becomes too much, and you can't really focus on if you're in the business too much, you can't focus on the business. So transaction coordinator would be the first one, who also potentially someone who sends out RVMs and answers the incoming calls, right? So paying Pat Live right now, call answering service, a lot of people in the land space use, paying them $1,000 a month. I can pay someone $10 an hour to answer calls. But again, too many people under you could create a problem too. So it's back and forth. But those are the next two I'm thinking of. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, I really believe, and you'll be getting close to this point, that to effectively manage people, really the max you should have is 4 or 5, maybe 6.
Yeah.
For a short time you could have 7 or 8, but you can't effectively manage 10 people. There's just too many roles, too many responsibilities. So I would encourage you and other people listening, hey, if you have a team of 6 or 7 or 8, you really got to be thinking about a mid-manager level to help manage and think about departments and what that looks like.
Yeah.
But I think you're set up so well. You got a great start, man. I'm so happy for you. And any other final thoughts you want to leave with other land investors and leave with us about leadership and whatnot?
Lead other land investors about leadership? What was that?
Yeah. Any final thoughts you want to leave with us about leadership?
Yeah, I think I said most of what I had there. I haven't been a leader for that long, so everything I say, you take with a grain of salt. But it's a really exciting, and I think that's the most important characteristic of someone running a business, right? How do they lead? How do they manage people? And it's something that I'm super passionate about and always wanting to learn more. So it was great hearing everything that you had today to say, and always looking over at you, even if you don't know, I'm looking over at you and trying to take some bits and pieces there. So it's an honor to be here, and I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Well, that wraps up today's episode. If this was helpful, don't just let it live in your head. Take one idea from today and actually put it in practice. That, my friends, is where the real progress happens. If you want to check out and keep the conversation going with other land investors like you want to make sure to check out a whole bunch of free resources and talk about challenges that we all go through. Please come and check out our leadership and land community on Skool. We've got bonus content, real discussions, and a free leadership course. No hype required at all. Just check out leadershipinland.com or go to Skool, that's SKOOL.com/leadershipinland. Appreciate you being here. Talk soon.